Hi, I'm Bob Canote, and welcome back to the Camp Chaos Chronicles. Today what we're going to do is take a look at the 1990 Jaguar XJS project, do a walk around, and generally assess what we've got here. Dang it. First, a little bit of history. The Jaguar XJS Coupe was produced first in 1975. It wasn't offered in convertible form until later because back in the 1970s, government interference in the auto industry in the United States resulted in increased emphasis on safety and fuel economy and so forth, and models that American manufacturers used to produce were no longer very common. Jaguar, being that the United States was the major market for the XJS and anything else that they happen to offer, followed that lead and didn't produce the car as a convertible right away when it was first offered in 1975. It wasn't until 1983 that Jaguar took a stab at it and produced something called the Jaguar XJSC, and what that was sort of a combination between a Targa, like in the Porsche 911 and the Corvette and so forth, and a convertible. From the windshield frame on back to about the front of the rear windows, you had a Targa top, which came off like a normal Targa would. But from there on back, you had a soft top, which folded down and opened up the entire interior of the car. Except that what it left was these very large metal frames around the windows. Even when they were down, those metal frames were there. So it was kind of an odd duck. In 1983, Jaguar contracted with a company called Hess and Eisenhart in Ohio. And Hess and Eisenhart were the people that at the time were making the limousines for presidents, Cadillacs, station wagons, and all sorts of other things that the manufacturers weren't going to be too concerned about making, but there was a need for. And what that involved was them basically cutting the roof right through the, right behind the windshield frame and removing the top, including the rather large swoopy C-pillars that were common on cars back then, like the Corvette and the Ferrari Dino and so forth, and then redid the quarter panels. In 1988, Jaguar, seeing the success of the Hess and Eisenhart cars, began to produce their own. And they continued to do so in pretty much unchanged form regarding the convertible top and its mechanism until the model ceased production in 1996. So, there you have it. Okay, first thing, let's just do a quick walk around and talk about how the car presents itself. First of all, if you look at it head on, it really looks pretty darn good. You've got a hood that's virtually flawless. The front fenders are the same. The chrome presents itself really well. Just a little bit of buffing would take any issues with that away. The plastic is not cracked. This thing right here is often broken right here through these corners, and in many cases is missing. Right here you can see that this blade on this side bent downward a little bit. No idea how that happened, but that's a pretty simple matter of just bending the mounts back and we're back in business. Another thing is right here, this black molding that you see in between the blade and the fender, many times this is missing and you can't get that. The bumper cover, excellent shape, chrome, everything looks really good. The grill right here is something that delaminates quite often, and the chrome in this one has not begun to peel, so that's in good shape. The motif in the middle here, being that it's not the plastic one that normally says V12 on it, these typically weather pretty well. One thing that we need to deal with is underneath here, and it's difficult to actually see, well, because what I'm going to talk about is missing. we've got up here that extends all the way from one side to the other. There's an air dam that fits on here. And you could be forgiven if you thought that it was just a cosmetic thing. But the fact is that this is an important part of the cooling system, because what it does is what an air dam does. It deflects air from going under the vehicle and directs it around the sides. And what that does, it creates a low pressure area under the car, and that actually helps evacuate the hot air from the engine compartment and the radiator so that it can more efficiently cool. Now, if we come around to the side, you'll also see that the side looks pretty good. There's not a lot of door dings in it, although there are some. These are things that can be very easily taken care of by a paintless dent removal company. The wheels, which are the standard lattice type wheels that are offered on many of the Jaguars of this era, are in really very good shape. They haven't been scrubbed on curves that much, and any issues that they may have could very easily be dealt with by a company that does that kind of thing. We come around the back side of the car. Again, the same thing in the back as in the front. Chrome is good. The bumper cover is good. All it would take just a little bit of bumper black to make that look great. But then we come over to this side and we've got some issues. If you look down the side of the vehicle in this direction right here, you can see that there is a multitude of door dings. Clearly, the car was parked next to somebody often that really didn't care about dinging up somebody else's car. That's the body, except for this thing up here, the top. The top, as you can see, I've got a piece of heavy black poly taped on over the top of it. There's a big slit in it that runs the length of it right above one of the bows. That means that we're gonna have to replace the whole thing. So there we are. Good looking car. But the question is it just a pretty face? We're gonna have to dig deeper and find out exactly what's underneath this hood right here. Well, there it is, the 5.3 liter Jaguar V12 engine in all its glory. It's kind of a complex thing. This particular one seems to be in reasonable working order. It runs great on the highway, accelerates well, starts well. So I'm pretty pleased with that so far. It does have a few issues. It does have an oil pressure fluctuation problem. I think that's just a simple bypass valve replacement issue. But generally it seems to be pretty good. Now, if you're looking at a car like this and you're actually paying market value for it, you really need to know more than that about the engine. And there's a couple of different ways that you can determine what condition the engine is in. First of all, you can do a compression check. Basically involves pull all the plugs out, put a compression gauge in the cylinder, spin it over and see where the compression peaks. A better test would be that of a cylinder leak down test or leakage test. And there you have two gauges. You hook up a compressed air line to the cylinder. The one gauge tells you what the line pressure is going into it, and the other gauge is the pressure in the cylinder, and the drop between the two is the pressure loss percentage. So that's a much better indication of what the engine condition is. Although both of those require tools and they require a certain amount of expertise to do. For the layman, there's a much better way, and it's easy to do, only takes just a few seconds, and that is you come around to the back end of the car, you open up the trunk, and if you got one of these back there, we know where this is going. Now, we moved inside because the wind started to get to be an issue, but let's get in the car and see what's what on the inside of it. That's such a happy little sound. Kind of like your dog wagging its tail when it's going on a trip. So let's give it a start. Starts right up, and it's cold right now. We started it up yesterday afternoon, and it's been sitting in the shop ever since, so bam. Starts real well. If we look at the instrumentation, we can see that It's got all the standard stuff. It's got the 4 sliders in the middle that we use for the 4 important functions: coolant temperature, oil pressure, fuel level, and charge. All of the lights, like low coolant and low fuel and parking brake and all those sorts of things, they're right up on top of the sliders, and everything works. The coolant temperature gauge, when the engine is warm, the little yellow bar is right up at the bottom of the end, and it pretty much stays there, and that's where you want it. Oil pressure, it's a little bit above 50 when the engine is cold, but when it warms up, it settles in at about 50 psi. At idle, when it's warm, it gets down around that little bar right there between 50 and 0, which turns out to be between 15 and 20 psi, which is also good. Fuel level, when that low fuel light comes on, you better start looking for a gas station, because when this thing gets down to 1/8 of a tank, you are out, okay? Believe me, I know what I'm talking about. The charge gauge reads right where it should be. Once it's running for a few seconds, it goes immediately to neutral. Perfect. Speedometers, right on the nose. The tach, perfect. If we look at the center console here, we've got sort of an information center, trip computer sort of thing that has total fuel, instant fuel economy, average fuel consumption, distance, average speed, time, and so forth. Everything works here, with the exception that I really can't get the clock to set to the current time, so not a big deal. I got a watch. The rest of the switches work, except for the vanity lights on the outside. One of those doesn't work, but it comes on when I open the door, so got a little bit of an issue there. The top control, top mechanism struggles a little bit to get the top up and back, so you got to help that a bit, but that's not a problem. You can actually do that manually if you wish. The windows mechanisms work perfectly, both the quarter windows and the side windows, and speed control, the cruise control, does not work. That's something that we're going to have to deal with, because we plan on taking this vehicle on extended road trips, and you really want to have cruise control. So the wipers work, and really for a $3,000 convertible XJS, this thing is highly functional, and I'm really impressed so far. Now we're going to talk about something that's kind of letting the team down, and that would be the interior. If we take a look at it, we can see the obvious things are the seats. And the seats clearly need some remediation here. You can see the driver's seat in particular, you've got a lot of cracks that have gone all the way through the seat leather. What you see here, all this dark stuff, what you think might be dirt, it's actually just, the finish is actually worn through, and you're looking at the leather underneath. So although it could use a bit of a clean, which we haven't actually done yet. This bottom right here, these cracks are right on the edge of going through. We got a big hole right here. The foam is good, but the bottom is going to have to be replaced. That whole seat, there's going to have to be something done to the entire unit there. The console, and this might be savable, but I've got another one out of the track car when I gutted it that we can use for this console. They're identical. A lot of this stuff right here is going to have to be re-dyed. This is going to have to be re-dyed. We're missing a panel here. The door cards, this one is pretty good. This one we can do something with. All it really needs is a re-dye. That one over there, you can see that the card itself is deformed, so we may have to actually rebuild the whole thing. And then if we look at these panels right here, obviously they're cracked and dirty, and the chrome seems to be in reasonably good shape. Although a lot of these screws here in these places that hold panels on, some of them are kind of rusty. This carpet back here is in really bad shape. A good cleaning will go a long way to bring it back, but it's probably going to have to be redone as well. The wood, all of it, with the exception of the console panel, has issues, and we're going to we're going to have to do something with all of it. And this is kind of a pleasant surprise. This is the covering for the convertible top that came with it. All it needs is a good clean, and it's in perfect shape. So as you can see, there's a lot of work, and there is a not inconsiderable amount of money that's going to have to be spent on this. Now this is kind of the point where we have to determine where we're going to go with this car. I would say that $3,000 is not going to do the whole job in the interior, unless we do a lot of this stuff ourselves. And time is an issue. We'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it. So at that point, we've got a $3,000 initial investment in the car. We got, you know, maybe $600–700 updating the car prior to us going on a trip out to the Black Hills. And then another $3,000. You're going to be almost $7,000 into the car. And what's it worth when you're done? So, you know, you got to be thinking about whether you want to go underwater with your car or not. Now, obviously, the guy across the street who's playing 3 rounds of golf a week and takes a couple of golf vacations during the winter, is he concerned about the return on investment on his application? I don't know. You'd have to ask his wife about that, but probably not. So, you know, sometimes us car guys are the ones that are saddled with having to be concerned about the bottom line, whether it's red or black at the end of the year. Never understood that, but we are. So there you are, the Jaguar XJS Convertible project in a nutshell. We're going to try to get going on this in the next couple of episodes to get this thing on the road again before the snow flies. So if you like what you see, subscribe, like us, follow us on social media, and we'll see you next time on the Camp Chaos Chronicles.